right, thank you. My name is Eli Longwell. I am with the ACLU of West Virginia. Thank you. But I came to ask a question about othering and how we deal with that when we're trying to deal with these building bridges and kitchen table issues. I think one thing that we've seen happen over and over again is political parties pick minority communities, pick disadvantaged communities, pick disadvantaged people, and demonize them and build issues around them and put frankly, our elected officials on the defensive, either to abandon them or to get framed as making everything about that. And so it's partially for you all, but I will say, having watched all of you, you do a fantastic job of standing up for those people and communities who have been other. My question is, how do you then lead the community where a lot of people may not find the sympathy, may not understand those communities? How do you keep the coalition together? How do you take it back to those kitchen table issues when there's so much an attempt to divide based on these other groups and other communities? Yeah. So that's my question for you.
Several answers, right? I don't know if there's a perfect answer, and thank you for the plug, Eli, but it is just that. It is about focusing on kitchen table issues, things that affect all of us in our everyday walk of life. And we believe that going forward in elections, that's what we want to get to, right? We want to make sure that people are hyper fixated about the issue. What is most important to them? And again, that's why we're going out across the state, my caucus, to connect with people. Understanding that everybody might not even feel like we do, right? But I feel like it is important for us, as true representatives, to understand what each and every community is going through, so that we can get their trust and support, and putting more folks like us, because we want to prioritize those things. And when we're able to prioritize those things, then we can take care of the other issues, right? And so again, I think it's just always trying to refocus and bring it back to those issues.
June of 2021, House Speaker Henshaw, along with the late Delegate Doug Scaff, put together a work group, an informal select committee to study the coal field situation. January of 22, there was a 14-page report. It was a legislative report called the West Virginia House of Delegates Coal Community Work Group Listening Tour Report. Have you all read that 14-page report? This is addressed to the delegates, to the legislators.
I remember when that happened. I don't think any of us were on that committee or have read that report.
I have not read that report. I would encourage everybody in this room to read that report. Please, everything about any recommendations in that report based on interviews and listening tours that were conducted by legislators. Hear me. Conducted by legislators. And really no action has been taken. So my question is, they answered one question, no, they haven't read the report. My ask of the Kanawha County Democratic Executive Committee is to get a statement, a written statement, about what the plans are of the legislators to deal with that report. Follow-up question. House Bill 2724, the Herbert Henderson Office of Minority Affairs, and its amendment in 2017. I would also like you to speak to that, and as a follow-up request, that there be something produced in writing from the legislators to the Kanawha County Democratic Executive Committee of what they see happening with the Herbert Henderson Office of Minority Affairs and House Bill 2724 as amended as it relates to the responsibilities outlined in that piece of legislation. Sir, what did your name say? I'm sorry. Charleston branch in the ACP, and a retiree from the Department of Commerce, 33 years.
Office of Minority Affairs. It was not specifically in the line item budget for this year's budget that recently passed. In years past, it was specifically named. So there's been some confusion about whether the office is being closed or not. Now, obviously, code cannot be closed without, legislative approval. But, how this governor is doing things along with the Office of Equal Opportunity. So there are some actions being taken. I cannot speak on them at this time, but there are actions being taken to ensure that the office is not closed under some executive.
Alrighty, so I'm Zane Lewis. I live here on the East End. And my question is about cities and towns kind of generically in West Virginia. Of course, over the past 50, 70 years, we both lost population and suburbanized. And that has kind of, cleaned out our towns and cities everywhere. And if you talk about walkability, you talk about food deserts, grocery deserts, that all affects public health. And if you talk about provision of public services, it all gets a lot harder when people are more spread out. So my question is reversing that trend a big focus of the Democratic Party of restoring, re-densifying our cities to try to push things in the right direction?
So there's two things with that. One is we are, as a caucus, focused on adding to our net population, right? And so I know there is a bill that Delegate Young has, it's a stay in state act. I have a bill sponsored, they're co-sponsored on it, the Young Professionals Tax Credit bill, right? It's not just for keeping people here, but for attracting out-of-state folks. So I think one, that is population growth. Number two is also being in a state to where we can work more collaboratively with our municipalities. Because there's going to be some things that they're governing over, talk about walkability and things of things of that nature in municipalities, they are more control over. But I do think it takes two tangos, and there might be some tools that we have to make their job a little bit easier in cities.
Thank you.
And I'm a senior citizen, as you can tell. Worried about my Medicare and Medicaid. But my big question is education and the children. The children are our future. We all need to know that. In numbers, it doesn't matter. The children are our future. Now, in Maryland, my sons live there, and my grandson is autistic, and they're taking away all these programs. They've cut all these programs. He needs aid in the classroom and all that. My question is West Virginia also following suit and cutting all those programs for children in need?
They haven't yet, but I assume they will have to with the cuts that are coming. And there's a lot of things that the executive branch can unilaterally do without us getting involved, things like that. We have a wait list for what's called the IDD program. So for someone that has autism, they would use IDD services. When it was Governor Justice, it was a big deal when he cleared the wait list a few years ago, and then that wait list continues to build up. I want to say there's over 500 people on it now, and spots don't open up on that very frequently unless you have more money. So those programs, as far as we know, are not being cut, but I mean, we did see a bill this legislative session that made it through one committee that said that if Medicaid changes federally at all, which we knew it was going to, we now have seen that happen, that 166,000 people, which was the Medicaid expansion population, would immediately lose all of their coverage. So they weren't talking about cutting specific programs, they were just talking about cutting people off. Moving forward, I don't want to speculate or scare anybody on what's going to happen, but with the amount of money that we're set to lose, things are going to be changing, and I would imagine that is one of the options.
I saw a post about North Carolina.
My name is Bob Brennan, and I am a number of post-amendment suffrage. And last week, President Trump announced that he wants to eliminate election by mail. First, I believe that is unconstitutional. Second, in 2020, People rely on the U.S. Postal Service for delivering ballots to county registrars. We cannot let this part of our right as citizens banished by the Trump administration. So I am calling upon all officials, local, state, and federal, to call on President Trump to stop his lunatic antics regarding election by mail. I'd like to thank all the members of the state Senate and the state House of Delegates who supported our calls at the plant and securing 800 jobs that is now secured in Charleston, not in Pittsburgh.
Elections are run at the state and especially at the county level, so President Trump doesn't know what he's talking about.
My name is Alex Sherman. I do a lot of work for inside the Human Rights Commission, the Human Rights Commission. I'm
Would just have your attention, please. It's very difficult for everybody to hear. You're talking in the background. Thank you. Go ahead.
all right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Wonderful. So I do a lot of work with the Human Rights Commission, and those help people with disabilities, gender, sexuality at times, etc. Also, white men do. I do represent white men from time to time. So it helps people, but I've heard a lot of rumblings from people who I trust that there is talk of doing away with the Human Rights Commission. Is there any, my question is, have you heard anything like that of the legislature? And if so, what is the status of that?
So no, we have not heard that. I believe that is federally mandated, however, who knows how long that will last. But no, this session they tried to get rid of the Equal Opportunity Office, but we haven't heard anything about the Human Rights Commission, though I know there's a delegate who's tried to get rid of it for many, many years. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. So no, we have not heard that. But it's been a very slow session for state, like this summer's been pretty slow for state news. So, which is a good thing for these folks.
Sure.
But no, we haven't heard that.
All right, great.
In the Dunbar Mexican restaurant lately, last few days. And ICE came in and abducted the staff, members of the staff. Well, U.S. Constitution, Amendment 14. I know you don't want to hear any more from me, but I'm going to tell you anyway. No state, United States, tried any person.
Over with the women in the NAACP. And we've been talking about a lot of serious issues. For me, my biggest question is, how are we going to change what the legislation looks like? When are we going to be not those doctors that keep prescribing medication and become the people who take control of our own lives? Voting is what's going to change things. So how do we talk to the people in our communities, in our families, in our houses, to get them to understand that division has to stop and that we have to stand up and be responsible for ourselves because nobody's coming to save us.
My name is Kathy Smith. I'm from Ravenswood, Jackson County here in West Virginia. I do not have a comment, I do not have a question, but I do have a request. The people that I think most of us wanted to address questions to today because they're national issues, they're not here. And my plan tomorrow morning, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get on the phone to Carol Miller's office, to Justice's office, to Catherine's office, and say, I went to Charleston yesterday expecting you to answer the questions of your constituents. And I was disappointed that you weren't there. You need to be responsive to the people who elected you. And my request is, join me in making the
believe me, we share your frustration in our efforts to get this. We invited them over 5 weeks ago. So it's frustrating, but again, not to your point, it's not surprising, but your question is appropriate.
On that point, I just want to lift up, when you're calling, if you see fit to do it, please mention specifically that healthcare crisis that will start in January. The reason she needs to be at the town hall. You're talking there, $2 billion a year of wasteful spend that we're going to have to pay to purchase healthcare starting in January. And Ellen might want to say something about how this affects Medicare as well. But it's an urgent matter. They come and listen to these facts and these stories. I mean, it's urgent that we will call and say, please save the premium subsidies. Extend these premium tax credits and come and listen to us talk about it. Here's something.
Since it looks like maybe one or two of us appreciate Social Security, there's a $491 billion trigger to be cut. That's a half a trillion, folks. That's even hard for me to wrap my mind around. It will be triggered between 2027 and 2034 with the Stop Pay-As-You-Go Act, and that's real cuts in your Social Security. So in your call to action, if you plan to do so, remember that.
We're coming down to the wire here, not because we don't want to hear your questions, but because we get with the women's club. So I'm going to entertain a couple more questions.
I just have a comment. Beanie Babies for sale for $2, the money goes to the animal shelter.
I was wondering, what are you guys doing, or what can we all do? Because they're calling around to state legislatures to go into the voting, the data, and the machines. Have you guys been contacted? I'm sure that's what you need us on the list. And so, if we all vote, who's watching that to protect that our votes, we're not being all kicked off voting lists?
So West Virginia regularly goes through the voter rolls, and if you haven't voted in a while, they'll send you a postcard that says you haven't voted in a while, fill this out and send it back in.
I understand that what you just heard what Trump and them just did 2 weeks ago nationwide.
No.
They're going to all legislatures and they're demanding access to the voting machines and the voting data, all of our information. There's a reason for that. And so you guys has anybody heard that? Yeah. Okay, so that's what I want to know, what we're going to do to protect if they're already in our machines, because they want to do things to those machines.
We have not been contacted by it, and they wouldn't
And I'm
contact
not
us
surprised that
before.
you wouldn't
Yeah.
be, but Morrissey in his offices, is there any way you can bring that up to find out if they have been?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please be brief.
Terry Payne Johnson. I work in elections and they count the ballots, we get out the ballots, take them to the registration book. And I can assure you what we've run into is it's accurate. I mean, I worked not just 1 year, several years. When I was active for years, retired state government, EIA, which takes care of me. And one of the legislators, you guys probably remember his name, I don't know, said, just let it go by, said, do away. So, you have to have all this stuff to talk about, all these things. But we can talk about it, but the main thing we have to do, I think one of the ladies mentioned this too, was we can talk about it, but if we don't go vote, it's not for church.
So I have no choice but to allow the Reverend Tim Lewis.
There's up top, out of Washington, this president may get a Nobel Peace Prize. But what they don't realize, the irony of that, is that Nobel was the one who made dynamite. And what this man is doing is dynamiting our education system, trying to destroy our history. Look at what they're doing. So I want to say this, been through a lot of battles in the past over textbooks. We have got to watch out. They're coming for the books. They're coming for the teachers. That's right. We've got to stop this. It cannot happen. And by the way, just a quick comment about something hopeful. We need to look at the civil rights movement with one strength and hope and courage. We need to look at that. They're trying to deny us all. Let's look at the Vietnam War and the resistance to it. The answers are there. The struggle was there. People united would never be defeated.
Quick thing here, and then we're going to close it out. So this just says to follow West Virginia Legislature. Go to www.westvirginialegislature.gov. Use Senate or House tab, then audio or video in that tab, and you can see sessions and committees online. Okay, my first thought when I added this to my closing remarks, which are going to be very short, is it looks to me like we need a whole lot more of these. So one of the things we're going to do after this today is one of the things we committed to doing is getting back together and saying, okay, what worked, what didn't work, how can we make it better, but how can we do this again and make it even more meaningful? Understanding that more meaningful should involve nonpartisan comments and discussions by independents, by Democrats and Republicans. We'll do our best to try to make that happen. Final thought. Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, nobody will ever deprive the American people of the right to vote except the American people themselves. And the only way they can do that is by not voting. So, I want to thank the co-chair, the wonderful Patty Hamilton. I want to thank the many people who worked with us for, I don't know, feels like about 9 years, but it's probably about 4 months to put this together. It takes an enormous amount of work, and I appreciate it. We appreciate everybody that supported us. I think it's worth adding that based on today's comments, we as individuals can make a difference. Voting is a moment in time. I just wrote this. I think I should sell it. Voting is a moment in time. Involvement is a constant commitment. So we all need to be involved. We need to stay involved. Thank you so much for this wonderful time, gentlemen.